Hello and welcome to the Home Assistant Podcast. My name is Phil. Joining me as usual, I've got my partner in crime, Rohan. Hello.
Hello.
And joining us from the US today, we've got Billy. Hey, Billy.
How's it going?
This episode is sponsored by Home Assistant Cloud by Nabu. Easily and securely access your local Home Assistant instance remotely for a small monthly fee that also supports the Home Assistant project. The configuration is done by the user interface, so there's no fiddling with router settings, SSL certificates, or any YAML.
All right, Billy. So whereabouts in the US are you from?
I am in Montana.
Excellent. Lots of Home Assistant users over there?
Not that I am aware of. There's maybe one.
Nice. Well, thanks for taking the time. Bringing it on. We'll talk to you in a minute. Find out how you Montanans. Is it Montanans? Is that correct?
Yeah, I
Or did
believe
just
so.
make that up?
No, Montanans. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's
Montanans? Montanians?
Montanites.
There you go.
Montanites? Yeah.
Oh, funny. All right. So first of all, before we get into the release, we should just catch up on our last episode that we had with Adrian. We were talking about smart switches, and Rohan, we were talking about the Lutron Aurora smart switches.
Yeah.
And how they work with, smart bulbs, Philips Hue and stuff. User Ford_GT on Reddit reached out to us and mentioned that they're using the Inovelli red Z-Wave switches, and they can be customized to disable the internal relay on the switch. Now, these are a US frequency-based smart switch, so
Right.
obviously only available for the North Americans. But I thought this was actually really cool. I haven't seen a Z-Wave model, at least out here in Australia, that can do this. So another option there, and of course, because it's Home Assistant and because these switches are pretty popular, I think they're like $35 US, so pretty reasonably priced.
Yeah.
They have, there's someone, actually, Brian, who is it? Brian Hannafin, has put on the Home Assistant forums a script that you can use to control the LED notification lights on those switches. So if you if you've got Philips Hue or other smart bulbs and you want another switch option, I thought that was really cool and worth a mention for everyone else.
So that's when you say control the LED. So like the little on my couple of my older linear rocker switches, I've got like a little LED that's the light's on when the power is off, but the power is on when the light's on. So you control that kind of thing. So you can do custom states or flashes or whatever.
Yeah, so these lights have a full RGB notification bar in them.
Oh.
So you can change the switch to go, purple or, any color you want basically. So, if the doorbell rings, you can have all your switches flash something, or if it's in the middle of the night, go red,
That's neat.
I actually have I bought a few of these before I moved, and I haven't dived. I haven't gotten too deep into them yet. I just have them got them showing up in Home Assistant, but they also have so that LED strip shows the dim level as well. So if you have them at 50%, it only lights 50%, and
that's kind of cool.
They're pretty cool.
So it's a strip. It's not just like a single LED.
Yeah.
That's neat.
They're really nice looking switches. I got like a 4-pack with 2 Z-Wave bulbs for like $75 or something like that. Like a crazy deal.
Yeah.
And so I haven't had a lot of time to dive into them yet, but I'm excited about them. They're pretty sweet. And then they have like a little scene button on them as well that you can program to do whatever.
That's actually very cool for that price. That's a decent. The only thing is, I don't know if as Ford_GT mentioned, you can kind of modify them to have to basically disable the relay. I don't know if that's through code or if that's physically.
No, it's an option, like in the Z-Wave config.
Oh, so you can actually just push it.
Yeah, and you can also do it at the switch. There's a manual configuration at the switch that you can do. So, they have like a config sort of
dip
mode.
Switches or something. Yeah.
Well, no, I think you hold the scene button for a certain amount of time, and then the light strip turns a certain color, and that's the configuration mode. And then it's a bunch of button presses to go through to do lots of different configurations.
That is very cool. We need more stuff like that.
Yeah, they're really neat.
Yeah.
They're pretty intense options on those switches, and it's a lot to go through.
Yeah.
There's a lot of options for people though.
But that's awesome, right? Like, I mean, it's a switch at the end of the day, but at the same time, it's like, okay, how can I make this do more or whatever?
Right.
So I respect that. That's awesome.
When I looked at the website today, they were all on back order, so they must be pretty popular. I think they're on back order until the end of August, so it's the middle of July now.
Yeah.
So, but at least there's options out there.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And it's Z-Wave, so local control and whatever. So
Exactly.
that's awesome.
And they on their website they mention Home Assistant compatibility, so they're which is awesome too.
There's a
That's
configuration file you have to put into your Home Assistant config. So, but otherwise, it's a pretty standard setup.
Cool. That's awesome. Are you planning on running that with? I guess we'll get more to it later.
Yeah.
But are you planning on running that with like ZHA or something like that?
Well, they're Z-Wave, but yeah, so they're just running straight through the.
Oh, sorry. I don't know why I read Zigbee in my head. That makes a lot of sense.
I thought I was the guest. I'm supposed to make mistakes like that.
Yeah. No, you're good. You're good. It's all. I'm also going on very little sleep. So.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's 8 a.m. for me, so I know it's late for you.
Well, it's later. It's 10 for me, but I'm still like just groggy. I think I'm going on like 5 hours of sleep right now, or 4 hours of sleep, and it's like just the last 2 weeks have been like that. So, which is great. All right, on to 0.113. So there's a few new features. A lot of stuff around automations and a lot of stuff around performance and it's almost like a back-end release. I don't want to call it a back-end release, but like it's there's a lot of stuff in the back end where they have upgraded a ton of stuff, so which is really neat. So let's start with even more speed improvements. The last version we did talk about this a little bit, saying, hey, they improved the speed. And you've noticed this across the last few versions where they have been trying to do that. Things like Lovelace loads first. So, whether it's physically faster or not, it feels faster, right? And then you got like a loading, hey, hey, it's still loading up, and you got that little yellow bar, and then they all go away. Just things like that. So Pascal basically worked with a pretty optimized version of Python 3.8 and which Home Assistant Core leverages under the covers. So it's, hopefully that's...
I think they benchmarked it. There's like a 40% increase based on this optimized version that Pascal's written. Like, it's amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, I mean, hopefully this also, I mean, and this is what we're talking about, is the speed improvements, but also that should result in less CPU usage as well, which for devices like my poor little Raspberry Pi that struggles on the regular, that might be really good.
So, Rohan, we've been talking, maybe I mentioned this in this last episode, but I know we've definitely been talking about it offline. I've been using Nathan's Soft UI.
Yeah.
And I have had to disable it because I found out that, there was just so many templates involved running it that, it was crashing my Home Assistant. CPU usage was going to 99%, 100%, and it would just bring down my whole host.
Yeah.
And I worked out that it was actually, all the templates in that Lovelace theme that was just causing issues. But I've been running the beta, and touch wood, it's been like a night and day. This release, I've gone back to Soft UI everywhere now. All my tablets are now running Soft UI, and CPU, I don't think has gone over half, like ever.
Wow.
So massive improvement. So this, I think, is shaping up to be my favorite release ever.
Yeah, so it sounds like that optimization that Pascal's done is really, really, really working, I guess.
But interestingly, that's not the big features to come out of this release, and I think, and this is why this is my favorite release, especially for this year, because I'm a particular fan of running everything in YAML, and I use a lot of scripts, and I think this release has been much more focused on bringing scripts and automations more in line with how a developer would work. And one of those now becomes, which is called running modes for scripts and automations. So what I like to do in my setup is I use scripts where I need to repeat code. As a developer, you create functions, methods that have code that you reuse all over the place. So one of those I have is when I want to change colors and make them all, random colors, I have a script to do that. And rather than rewrite the code everywhere, I put it in a script and call it. Now, previously, the problem with Home Assistant was a script can only be executed at one time. So if you've got 5 lights that need to call that script, you would have to wait until each one of those lights had finished using that script before you could execute it again. But now there's new what's called running modes for scripts and automations, and so you can choose things like parallel mode. I think there's a loop mode. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do. So this parallel scripts, I've basically gotten rid of a whole bunch of wait underscore templates that I've had to use all over the place. And yeah, this is awesome.
Which is cool. So I've always tried to avoid scripts. I mean, Phil, you've seen some of my automations. I like to keep them very simple. And
too simple.
And yeah. But it's. I feel like now I have to look into this and I have to actually do it. And that's genuinely the reason why I've always known it's been, it's a better way to do it and all that. And it's just been just because it's a better way, does that mean I want to put the time in to do it? Right. And, now I think, this is something I do want to revisit and, personally on my installation. Right. And just to leverage again, now I can do cooler things like run more than one thing at a time. Right. Which, I mean, hasn't really been an issue for me, but as stuff grows and as I leverage more automations and such as well, which I'm starting to do more of. That's definitely interesting. Another cool thing that now exists in Home Assistant are loops. So you can do a variety of different types. You can do like a while true, or you can do a for where you want to run a condition a certain number of times. So this is actually, again, another really powerful tool. Again, I don't think I've run to the point where I needed to do a loop yet, but I think there's definitely some really good use cases behind it.
For sure. I'm not using personally loops. I'm using a lot of timers, run an automation every 10 minutes or something to change the colors every 10 minutes. So maybe they could be replaced by loops, but I'm sure there's going to be like these sort of things being added in. Now there's going to be like cool stuff that's going to come out, right? Like someone on the forums is going to share a script. Yeah. And now like it'll use loops and they'll be like, oh, of course, that looks cool, right?
Yeah. And this is how Rohan ends up learning scripts.
Exactly, right?
The loops thing is kind of something that I've wanted to use a few times, mostly just for like flashing lights I have two young boys. So like flashing random colors and stuff for their bedroom. And it was always like trying to run the script from itself at the end while there's an input Boolean on or something like that. It was really complicated. It never really worked that well. So I kind of abandoned it. And now I'm actually kind of excited to jump back into that just because their room has gotten boring.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. But that's it, right? It just opens up kind of the possibilities there. And it's neat.
So another programming feature or something that I really struggled with in automations, and that is switch cases. And so there is a new they're calling a chooser, which is basically, if you're a programmer, you'll know like an else if block or a switch case block. These are pretty cool. So now I use these a lot in my workaround has been previously templates. So for example, I've got a lot of Xiaomi wireless switches that I use, and when someone presses the left button, I need this action to take place, but if they press the right button, I need another action to take place. So rather than doing an automation for each button, I have a whole bunch of templates, service underscore template, data underscore template, based on what button was being pressed. But now with these switch cases, I think this is really going to open up a lot of potential advanced sort of scripts and automations, because now we can sort of go into different blocks. Go in, all right, if it's this, do that. Much more easier than having to fire up a template, which for a lot of people, templates is a bit confusing and seem as advanced more than what YAML is, especially when you have to get the indentation correctly and quotes and all that. Yeah. So this is really cool to see as well.
No, and I think to your point, Phil, the templates, they're great. They're super flexible, but it's to your point. It does just add more complexity to your config, right? Where, I mean, personally, I do use templates and I hate it, right? But I don't really have a choice, right? And this is definitely like a native construct for it is definitely way better to use, I think, at least.
Yes,
just even in your head, you're not switching between the Jinja 2 or whatever and YAML, right?
And it makes sharing it with people easier as well.
Sure.
not a whole line of template code. It can be, broken down on separate lines. Easier especially if you're using GitHub or something.
Yeah.
So would this be like if you have a toggle switch that you've, like those Inovelli switches where you've disabled the relay? Like I have something like that for my back patio lights, where the lights have their built-in motion sensors, so they turn on and off on their own. But if I want to turn them on, I have a smart switch that has just been wired to just be powered on all the time. So I use Home Assistant to actually toggle those on and off. Does that make, like with an automation? Does that make sense?
No. So it's more. This is more of like you having like a if. So if I need to do like I don't want to call them conditions, but if you need to say, if my button has been pressed down for 5 seconds, then do this. If it's been pressed down for 10 seconds, then do this, right?
Okay.
Right now, that a lot of that happens through Jinja 2 templates in the configuration. So what happens is with this, now you don't really need to do that anymore. You kind of have the native construct in Home Assistant to do that.
Gotcha.
So for example, in my notifications, where I use my Amazon Echo as well as the Home Assistant app to push a notification down, what I have is I have kind of one notification system with like, hey, if the front door is open or if the back door is open, right? And then if the front door is closed or if the back door is closed, and then based on that, do a couple of notifications. Now my requirements changed halfway through, so I actually had to break it out into 2. At one point, it was one big notifications thing with a bunch of if statements, and even now it's 2 smaller ones with if statements. So when it announces front door is open or back door is open, that's controlled by that if.
Gotcha.
Right. And in this case, I think I don't know if I could fully replace the templates. Again, I haven't looked at the switch cases, but I think I should be able to pretty easily use this instead of the templates.
I'll have to look into it a little bit more.
Yeah, it could build up your message. And
yeah,
I'm not a programmer. Have all of this I've learned through using Home Assistant. So this is a new new thing for me.
Yeah, it is interesting, right? Because because without ifs and stuff, you would have like 100 different things with conditions, right? So it's just really inefficient, and you have like 4 things that in my case for my notifications, I would have 4 different automations that do essentially serve the same purpose, to say if my door is open or closed and which door. So that's the nice thing about this. Just keep things a little easier. All right. So cooldowns for automations. So now you can basically specify a cooldown on automation, which basically says, okay, how often will this automation run? So let's say you have a automation that you just ran and you don't want it to trigger too often. So in a case like this will be, okay, how can I give it a bit of time, chill out. Again, this could also even ruin something, right? So as an example, maybe you have a motion sensor and you have a fan that runs based on a motion sensor. And as that, maybe that motion sensor turns off, you wave your hands really quick and it turns back on. So that may not be the best thing for the motor on the fan. So in this case, you can have a little bit of a cool down time, let it do its thing, and then run the automation again after a little bit. I don't know if I did that example any justice, but...
I think a good case for this would be actually your notifications for your doors that you were just talking about. Like if you're constantly opening and closing your doors, every time you open the door, you don't want a notification, right?
Yeah.
You probably want a notification once an hour, basically. So with this cooldown thing, you can now set, all right, send me a notification when the door's open, but don't send me one until an hour's passed.
Yeah, and actually, it's funny you say that because I don't know why I use that example, because I have that exact use case where so again, even in the back, I have a sliding door where I close it, but then if you close it too fast, it bounces back. So I get like an open, close, open, right? And then so I get like 4 notifications just because I tried to close the door. And this is a great use case for that. So you can put a cooldown period of a few seconds where I might want more than once an hour, because what happens if I just close the door, leave, and then I want to know if somebody else opens the door, right? It might be somebody I want or somebody I don't want in my house, right? So still have a cooldown time for that, so I can essentially stop that physical bounce back.
So there's actually another way you can stop that bounce back too. So you can, in the trigger, you would have, when the door is opened, the state changes to open. You can actually specify that the open state has to be for a certain amount of seconds.
Yeah,
so
that's what I do now.
Yeah, exactly. So now this cooldown stuff is another way to essentially do the same thing.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
I actually have been using cooldowns for quite some time with templates. So there's all automations expose a state attribute of when they were last triggered.
Yeah.
So if I have, for example, like I have my good morning Jarvis notification, but I don't want it to run, I have multiple triggers, it could be when I walk into the bathroom, it could be, a certain time, could be every 15 minutes it checks, are the conditions true? I only want it to go off once a day. So I have a condition in there that if the automation has already been triggered today, don't run it again. And now with the cooldown for automations, I can just set that as, instead of using a template, there's just a configurable option. Makes it much easier.
Yeah. And again, it keeps less pointless config, not pointless config, but less superfluous config, I guess, where you have extras. Yeah.
Much more easier to read. I'm not going to miss a single quote somewhere and stuff up my entire config and get into safe mode, right?
Yeah. Been guilty of that one too many times here. So
yeah. The struggle is real.
I know.
Some noteworthy updates for this release. So Tato, have you wish to pronounce it? They have water heaters and climate devices. And one of their features is being able to set timers. So now there is a service in Home Assistant that you can set those timers on those devices. So you might have your climate device turn off after 30 minutes or something. That can now be controlled via Home Assistant.
Also, optimistic mode is now available for template switches, where, again, you have some light platforms that leverage it that may not know the state of a light. So now this has been extended to that template switch.
Basically, you'll get those little lightning bolts in your Lovelace. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Netatmo public weather sensors are back. That's good to see. And they're available to be configured from the UI. So if you are missing those, I think they got deprecated quite a few releases ago now, so they must have come back through the API. But they're back in Home Assistant now, and they can all be no more YAML, because configure it from the UI.
Yeah, welcome back. All right, so breaking changes. So because of all the work around automation, scripting, and all of that, there are quite a few breaking changes around that. So again, best advice is read the release notes, but a couple of highlights. First off, the minimum required Python version has been bumped. So it used to be 3.7.0, now it's 3.7.1. So if you're using kind of a classic installation without Docker or anything like that, you need to care about this. If you're using Docker or Hazi or supervised Home Assistant, you don't need to worry too much about that.
Configuring a Philips Hue bridge via YAML has now been deprecated, so it's moving over to the UI. If you have Philips Hue configured in YAML, when you boot into this version of Home Assistant, it is going to copy in your config, so you won't have. Then you can remove it safely, so you don't have to worry about setting it all up again. And I believe they've also put in, like, if you need to manually specify, for example, you need to put in your IP address and all the manual config. That can all be done through the UI now, so there's no need for YAML when it comes to Philips Hue.
Lovelace has now deprecated HTML imports in itself, so there's extra HTML URL that you can configure. So that will now be deprecated as of 0.115, and the support for that will be removed. So you can switch to, there's extra _module _URL or extra JS URL ES5. So if you want to import JavaScript or anything like that, but essentially you do need to modify that if you're using it.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of browsers supported the HTML import anyway, so I don't think this will affect too many people, but there might be a random person out there that is using it, and
yeah,
might just be that time to change over.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, Billy, now we get to the fun part of the episode, so I guess... Where do we start? I guess we should start with, how long have you been using Home Assistant for, and what sort of got you into Home Assistant?
So I've been using Home Assistant for about, I think, almost 3 years now. My kind of dive into home automation happened mostly via research when my wife got pregnant. It was just something that, trying to figure out how, just make our lives a little bit easier once the baby came. That was about 6 years ago. And so basically spent a lot of time just researching, mostly just as a hobby, but just how I wanted to automate our house. And so at that time, SmartThings was kind of the big platform. And so I was kind of looking into that.
Yeah.
But by the time it, got to the point where I was actually purchasing things and implementing in my house, the cloud issues of SmartThings were kind of starting to show up on the forums and things. So at that point, I was kind of looking at Insteon, just because I like the switches, and I actually still use Insteon switches for almost everything in my house, nice. Just because they look like a standard switch. It doesn't look like a smart switch, and so I was kind of doing the Insteon hub, and then to do bulbs, I had a Singlid hub, which is a Zigbee, and it's basically just a bridge. So I was kind of just doing that at first, and then wanting that local control and more automation options, where that was all just kind of remote control type of stuff. There was no triggers or anything like that. So that was kind of when I started looking for something more. And I use a Mac, and so I had seen Home Assistant, and so I just loaded it up on my Mac, and just to kind of try out. And there still is an Insteon hub integration. So I kind of did that, but it was I don't really have any programming background. I'm tech savvy, I guess, but I've never done anything in code at that point. And so Home Assistant was very, there was very little, or if any, UI integration. Everything was in YAML.
Yeah.
And so it was I had it working, but it was kind of like, I don't know if I've got a baby, and it's like, I don't know if I have time to like learn this stuff. And so I bought an ISY 994i for the Insteon stuff. And that's I think it's Java based. And it's a little more UI friendly, I guess. And it's ugly as heck, but it works. And so I was using that for a little bit, but it didn't have any Zigbee support. So I was still having to use the Singlid app for my bulbs. And so that was I did that for about 6 months, and then I decided that I would kind of see where Home Assistant was. And so sort of jumped back in and, bought a Raspberry Pi 3, I think it was a 3B plus, and loaded Has.io on there, and kind of went from there. I used that for about a year, I think. And then somewhere between 6 and 12 months ago, I put it back on a Mac Mini. And so I'm running it direct on the Mac Mini with that Nortec Zigbee and Z-Wave stick, USB stick. So that runs all my sensors and bulbs. And then the Insteon switches are still running through the ISY. It's just with the ISY integration. So it all runs through Home Assistant. All my automations are in Home Assistant, except for Insteon has kind of a scene based automations, and they tie things together in scenes. And so like for 3-way switches and some of the automatic dimming based on the time of day, I still use in the ISY because it happens a little cleaner, I guess. It doesn't need the state to be on to then trigger. So I use a lot of smart bulbs for like time of day, light, color, temperature, and brightness. Yeah. And with Home Assistant, it has to turn on, and then then it dims, or then it changes color. It has to like get that trigger first. And in the ISY, it just brings it straight in. So I'm not sure exactly how it does it, but it basically just sends that signal directly to the switch or the bulb to go on to that brightness. So it doesn't have that. It doesn't have that like where it comes on full brightness and then dims automatically.
Oh, that's weird. So that must be an Insteon specific. So in my Lutron setup, because and in the evenings I have I have basically a scene set up, so it goes, lights turn on at different percentages, but I've never seen it go like full pop then come down.
Even some of my Zigbee stuff with my decons and even Philips Hue, when you send it, like as part of the light turn on service, you can specify the brightness it should turn on to and the color temperature. And
that might be something Insteon specific though. I'm not
sure. It does. If I just send a service call that's saying to go to, a specific brightness, like that stuff works. But a lot of my, what is it when you have a scheduled light color temperature throughout the day? What's that called? I can't remember the name.
Yeah, like the flux kind of
Yeah.
style, like
Yeah.
So it's like that. But I have that set up for almost all my lights in the house.
yeah.
And if I just send the service call to a bulb, it'll come on at the proper brightness and temperature. But they a lot. So because I'm using switches to turn things on and off, and I'll explain where that all. So instead of using just automations to turn lights on and off, it requires the switch trigger. So it has to.
Got it.
Yeah.
So the trigger is the switch turning on, and then and the reason is because my wife is very against a lot of this stuff, and so she still likes the control at the switch. And so so basically it's that it like turns on, and then Home Assistant sees that it's on, and then it kind of like
Got it.
changes
Okay,
that.
so it's your use case specific.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly.
Got it.
So I forget where I was at, but yeah, so basically I've been using Home Assistant for a couple years. I really like the Insteon switches, and so most of what I'm using is the switches are Insteon, bulbs are typically Zigbee, and then a lot of my sensors are Z-Wave. So I kind of have it set up as like sort of these separate radios, so that it all kind of works independently, I guess, and they're not bogging each other down.
Yeah.
And that just sort of happened on accident, so stuck with it.
That's cool. Hey, at least it worked out accidentally or well organized.
Yeah.
You could have some switches that are this, some switches that are that, and whatever.
Yeah,
right?
I'm kind of getting into that now because of those Inovelli switches. I'm sort of jumping into Z-Wave more than a sensor, and so it's a whole different. I don't know. I've never done anything in Z-Wave other than those sensors. So having like the switches and it's just slightly different. I've gotten used to the Zigbee, like the ZHA integration, and so jumping over to that Z-Wave integration is just a little. It's just a little different, I guess.
Different, yeah. I know. You mentioned earlier that you're doing some cool stuff for your kids and all of that. What are some neat things you're doing for your kids?
So actually, the first go ahead that I got from my wife with all the smart home stuff was we like to call it the potty light. And so I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and when the 5-year-old was potty training. We had this long hallway that went from his bedroom to the bathroom. And so that hallway, I put just smart bulbs in there for dimming. And so at bedtime, one of those bulbs would automatically stay on at 1% and everything else would turn off. And so it just kind of became his like night light to if he needed to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. So that kind of jump started the whole thing. That was like you can do this. And so then I jumped way in, and now she's frustrated all the time.
She regrets everything.
Probably.
Yeah.
So the potty light still lives. We actually just moved recently. And so I'm right now, my house is still in a huge state of transition of trying to get everything set back up. So it's not everything is up and running, but since my 3-year-old is now potty training, we have the potty light on a lamp in the hallway. And so that still runs. It's kind of, and now I have motion sensors so that it'll turn off at like 9 o'clock. And then if somebody walks through the hallway, it'll come back on for a little bit. So that's nice. been kind of nice.
Are the motion sensors sensitive enough to pick up the little children walking through the rooms?
Yeah, actually, So I have two, one at each end of the hall, and one will pick up. One is right over their door, basically, and it also picks up if my wife or I come out of our bedroom, and then the other one is at the other end of the hall. And so between the two of them, it picks. I have it kind of pointed down so that it picks them up. Right, it picks up our cat.
Sure.
Yeah. So they work really well. One of them's it's kind of funny actually. One of them's an Insteon motion sensor and the other one's a Z-Wave motion sensor, and they both seem to work really well. So there's very little difference in the lag as far as going through Home Assistant. So
okay, that's good.
And then I have Hue bulbs in their fixture in their room, and so that also goes on that throughout the day it's brighter or dimmer, and then around bedtime it goes pretty dim for reading books. And then I have a bed sensor under each of so they share a bedroom, and I have a bed sensor under each of their mattresses. So when they're both in bed for a minute, then those hue bulbs will go to like a color scene that they have chosen. So it's three bulbs, and one's blue, one's green, and one's pink or something like that. So it's like their little thing. Cool. And then after an hour, that turns off, fades away and turns off.
That's neat.
So yeah, that's kind of their like. So it's kind of fun, because then when we're reading books, their little lamp will turn on automatically, and the overhead lights will go to their little color scheme, and it's but of course, whenever it doesn't work, they're like, "Dad, I want the colors."
Like, see, that's a problem, because now you just made yourself the technician for
But that's we've all done that. I think that's
sure.
It's fun.
Did you make the bed sensors?
So I actually use Insteon open close sensors, which have external terminals. And so then I just for theirs, I actually found like a little binary. It's just like a little button press,
pressure
almost.
Sensor or something. Okay.
Well, it's not. It's just it's just binary. So it's just a little button that when I've got it sort of set it like into their bed frame, so that if the mattress is on it, it's not going to press it down enough to actually trigger it. But then once they get in, it's really a tricky, because they don't weigh very much. It was like a really tricky thing to get it. So it was just enough to where when they were on it, it triggered, but when they got off, it untriggered. I'm still trying to figure that out. Actually, it's like a 75% works. So,
which because that's actually kind of interesting, because, well, in my mind, two things. One, I'm surprised that the weight of the bed isn't just always pushing it on, or
I have kind
weight
of like
whatever's on it.
A little piece of like, so I have it set into the bed frame a little bit, so it's not pressed. If it was just flush, if it was set all the way the height of the button, the mattress would actually push it down. But I've got it set in a little bit, and then like I think it's like a piece of cardboard or something, just to like give it a little
push it down a little more.
So then when they actually get on, it actually pushes. So it's tricky. Like I said, it works about 75% of the time. I'm still working the kinks out.
Do they and how does it work when they like is it still pretty solid when they like turn and like toss like?
So they're small. It's just right. It's almost right under their pillow, and so
got it.
It's, almost anywhere they move, as long as they're up towards the pillow, it works.
It'll catch it.
And I have it so that it's one of those where it's like if it's if they are off of the bed, if it's not triggered for 10 seconds or something like that, then it'll actually say that they're out of bed. So those little movements and stuff aren't going to send me, because I actually have like a notification as well that from bedtime until when we go to bed, if they get out of bed for more than a minute or whatever, I'll get a little ding on my phone.
I mean, it's good, right? I mean, and again, this may not be your use case, but I'm sure there's some folks listening here that they may have kids or other family members that might have like sleepwalking or like one of those kind of things, right? Like where that you do want to be alerted of that kind of stuff, right? Or dementia, these kind of things where it's like, hey, this is kind of concerning. So I totally get that. I actually really like that from a safety perspective. Yeah,
and there's on the forums, I've seen some other projects for bed sensors where they used like an ESP and actually getting based on the weight and stuff like that. And so this is a very binary, super simple. So if the cat gets on the bed, then it shows that they're in bed. But at the same time, I have all that stuff as a condition of like if it's at bedtime and some other conditions, so that it shouldn't trigger throughout the day.
The kids once the kids get smart enough, they're just going to start throwing the cat on the bed and
or like a
foiled again. That's right.
I have so for our bed, I have bed sensors, same thing, but instead of the little button, it's just a resistive pressure sensor. Again, still binary, but that one actually works because we have a wood platform, and so the match, so that one actually works really well on our bed, and so we've got one on each side. So if we're both in bed, then the sort of the good night scene, everything else in the house turns off, and And that's actually where I want to use that those Inovelli switches for that notification light. So if anything is still on, or if the garage door is open, or if the door is unlocked or something like that, the little notification light on those Inovelli switches, I want to use that to sort of let us know that something in the house isn't right. And then you can just go push the button to turn it off or whatever.
Sure.
So
That's actually a great use case.
Yeah.
yeah. And so one thing I wanted to mention too is because I'm using Insteon, they have these keypads that are really nice, a 6-button or 8-button keypad. And one of the things I've done is I have one in the garage and then one at the main door where we go in and out. And I've made like an all off button so that you can, if we're gone, all the lights will turn off anyway. But if, for some reason our presence sensors aren't working or whatever, my wife, again, like I said, she likes to use the switches. So if you press that all off button, everything in the house will turn off. But through the ISY programming, I can actually say if anything in the house is on, then that button will actually light up. So then it's the same thing with those. So I'm kind of
right.
I want to do that with those Inovelli switches, but I've already got it for a couple switches with those keypads. So it's nice like if anything in the house is on, when you're leaving, you can see and just hit that all off button, and then everything shuts down.
And then
so that's been one of my favorite things to do, is just having that. And I'd like to have that in Home Assistant, but Home Assistant actually there is a new integration, so maybe it can, but the ISY programming allows to turn that light on that keypad button without anything else. So
that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
How are you driving a lot of this? So like in the sense of like what's your, I'm trying to not to sound like this is like a business conversation, but what's your like strategy for in terms of how people interact with your home automation?
Yeah.
So do you use touch screens? Do you use like Amazon Echo devices or Google Homes or whatever, or just straight up pull out the phone app, or just switches? And
so
cool.
So like I said, my wife really likes to just use the light switches, and so I've kind of used that as to confine, or not to confine me, but just like as a good, okay, here everything has to still be available at the switch, and it's good for guests and stuff too, because we have babysitters come over, and so that's where I basically like. Everything is still very much available on the switches. And so that's why I have that, for that flux, or God, I still cannot remember that word, but the listeners are probably like, it's this. But yeah, so it's mostly with switches, but I do have a little tablet magneted to our refrigerator, right next to where we make coffee. So I just have like a tab on Lovelace that shows, so I've got our meal plan showing there, some schedule stuff for the kids, like, what's their water day or whatever at daycare, or, just certain things that happen every week. And then like garage and garbage and recycling, those days. So all that stuff kind of just shows up there. And then if something didn't run properly, or if I want to change a color manually, I just use my phone. And as I said, my wife is not that interested in this stuff. So she just turns things on and off, basically.
Okay.
So yeah,
again, nothing wrong with that.
So mostly through switches, a little bit in the app. We do have the Echoes, but I haven't really done anything with that. We're just not huge fans of the voice control. When you've got the switches right there, it's not as necessary.
I'm interested to hear more about this meal plan that you've got in Lovelace. So what are you using to do the meal planning, and how do you integrate it with Home Assistant on Lovelace?
It's a little bit manual. So I have an Android phone, and I just have a Google Keep note that shows that I just have our, when we make the meal plan, I just put them in that note. And then there's a Google Keep integration, I think, through the community store. And so it'll just show that note basically with the check boxes. And then when I check it off on my phone, it'll just, so it's really just showing that note on the tablet. It's still very manual on my end in the phone.
but it works though.
But yeah, it works well, and it's nice when she makes it'd be nice if we had some, because she has an iPhone, if there was some way without her having, with their first party notes app or whatever. She doesn't download a bunch of apps and stuff. So it'd be nice if there was something where we could share it together and then it could show up in Home Assistant. But for now, it's just the Google Keep integration from that community store. So I mean, it works.
Look, if it works, I mean, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, right? I mean, it's but that's the thing. Don't overcomplicate it.
Right. It's more for
you have to do 100 steps just so that it's in Home Assistant.
Yeah, exactly. And it is nice because then I just have to put it into my Notes app, which I use anyway. And so then it just shows up. But like I said, it would be nice if it was something that she could also do on her end if she's changing the meal or whatever. It's, so, but it like I said, it does work pretty well, and at least then it's there on the in the kitchen ready for us. So
yeah, I know there's a couple of like I don't know what to call them, but like I guess couples apps that that I don't know if they're still on Home Assistant. I know they were, but at the time my girlfriend wasn't living with me, so that was like, okay, whatever. Yeah, we don't really have like a shared grocery list and stuff. Now we have, and we use like any list and stuff like that, but it's like,
exactly, yeah.
It'd be nice, to your point, Billy, just to have like a lot of these different pieces in a separate view in Home Assistant.
Yeah.
I think that would be kind of cool.
Yeah. I kind of like having that family view because it does just that. Yeah. So then that tablet, I'm not using, it's an old Fire tablet and it's super slow. And so it's not worth changing, but like changing tab views or doing any control from it, but it's just nice having that right there. And then it's
even if you had to change tab views, it's like, okay, fine. It takes a second, like not the biggest deal in the world. Right.
Yeah. And actually, so just last night a new sort of project that I've been wanting to do for a while. And so I've got it kind of finished up last night. But for our garbage day and recycling, we have, garbage is every Tuesday and then recycling is every other Tuesday. And so I just used an LED strip with an ESP with I think it's WLED flashed onto it, and so I've got just a little LED strip that lives on the wall over my garbage can and recycling can, and then on Tuesdays at 6 a.m. The lights will either turn, so half of it will turn green and half of it will turn red when it's just garbage day. So the green is over the garbage can, showing that's the day that goes out. And then on the other Tuesday, where they both go out, the whole strip turns green. So I haven't set up all the automation for it yet, but I got the project built and mounted, and everything's works. I just haven't set up the automations to run it yet, but the sensors are all in Home Assistant already with I think it's just garbage. What's it called? Garbage collection, I think it's another community from the Hacks store. And that's what have been using for that family view on Lovelace, is just to show that garbage day is, tomorrow and recycling is in 8 days or whatever. So I just use those sensors to just, so then when we come out into the garage, that light is on to sort of remind you that, hey, this needs to go out.
Oh, I really like that.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. Once I get it all up and running, I'll probably put it on the forums just to show it off. But it's
that. Honestly, man, I'm sold. I know this is the stupidest thing for me to be like, hey, man, oh my god, this is unreal. But it's so practical. I love it.
Yeah, and that's the kind of there's a lot of things that I want to do that are just for fun. But it takes a lot of time away. I'm already, I work 50 to 60 hours a week during the summer and 2 kids and stuff. So it's it's hard to, to do these things when it's just for fun. But when it is like a practical thing like that, it's something that, hey, if it works well and is consistent, then it'll get accepted by the family.
Well, and it's funny because for us, we have, where I live, the city kind of, or I guess the region, made an app to say, hey, this is because again, on public holidays or whatever, obviously they modify the schedules and whatnot. So it's actually a really good app. Problem is, and it even sends you so I have it set up so the night before collection day, it'll send me an alert at 10 p.m. just because hey, you're probably home, whatever, right?
Yeah.
So the problem is I have to look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I have to read the notification. And that's where it all falls apart.
Do you use a iPhone or Android?
I use an iPhone.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, because with Android, so I use Tasker for a lot of things, and you can take notifications and then send out an HTTP or like a REST, what is it? HTTP GET maybe, or send, so you can send a thing to Home Assistant to then do something from there. But
but again, that means I have to look at my issue is I don't look at stuff.
Well, but what I'm saying is so Tasker can actually take that notification and then automatically send it. So you don't have to look at it from your notification. It'll just send it to Home Assistant automatically.
And then I can have it alert on whatever else. And
careful, Billy. He's an iPhone user. He can't get. This is beyond him. Okay.
I know. I'm actually.
It's true. It's true.
Thinking about switching back to iPhone, but
look at that. Because you know what, I got an Android tablet a few days ago, and honestly, I was kind of disappointed with it. I got a Samsung Tab S6 Lite or something like that, and I was just like, it just looks like the same UI I had with my Samsung S4 or whatever. Just it's better screen, a little more polished, rounded edges on the icons and stuff. And I'm like, kind of, I don't know. Like, there's nothing where I'm like, oh, this is cool, right? Like, it's just all right.
I think with Android though, it's that you can customize all that stuff yourself. So there's a lot of like skins and different launchers and things that you can put on. So I don't know. This isn't an iPhone Android podcast, right?
Yeah.
That's all right, Rohan. Right. Soon you'll be able to put widgets on your home screen and you'll be able to change the mail app.
Yeah,
that's right.
You'll have some customizations that Android's had for years. Don't worry.
Eventually. But yeah.
So Billy, can you tell me about your? Because you sent us in your email telling us a few of the things you did, and one of the things that really I was intrigued by was your battery charging.
Oh yeah.
Whole system that you've created, and I'd really like you to share that with everyone.
Sure. So in my regular life, I own a small lawn care company where it's basically just me and one other guy. And last summer, so when I started it about 5 years ago, I wanted to go fully electric. Mm-hmm. And last summer, I finally bought the big mower that's fully battery powered. I get 7 hours of mow time on a single charge.
Wow.
And,
nice.
It's really awesome. I've been very pleased with it. And then, all my small tools are battery powered. So I'm almost fully there, but that's, maybe next summer I'll get there. All this stuff costs a lot more money than the gas powered stuff. So
yeah,
but it saves me a lot of money too. So for all my small tools, they're Makita lawn care, tools. And so they use the same batteries as like the drills and all their construction tools and stuff. So I've got this big array of battery chargers in my garage that's mounted on the wall. And I use a Shelly, I think it's a 1 PM with the power monitoring. And I use that because it has the wattage that you can run through it is a lot higher than a lot of like regular smart plugs. Or maybe the amperage. I don't know. It's capable of handling a lot of power, I guess. So I use that to as a sensor essentially for how many batteries I have charging at any one time, because I've got the ability to charge 6 batteries at once, but I have 12 that I need to charge every day. And so I've set up template sensors based on how many, based on the usage or the power usage. So it tells me roughly how many batteries are charging. And then when they're all done, it'll go to idle. And then after 10 minutes of idle, then I'll get a notification on my phone. And I'd like to have some kind of light as well, because again, like Rohan, I also don't look at my phone or look at things. So I need something to like, hey, you flashing. And, but
someone to slap you in the face.
But anyway, so there's a notification that says, hey, the batteries are done, time to switch them over. And so then I, go back out and swap the batteries out, and that works really well. And then for the mower, so that's all in my garage. And then for the mower, that is parked at a shop across town. And so I've used another Shelly that's been basically, so the way I did this is I just cut up an extension cord and then wired it. So that's, it's basically just like a pigtail now. So you can just use that extension cord for anything. And so again, for this, I have another one.
How is America not burnt down with all these crazy electrical
They're all
stuff you guys
UL
do?
listed, I think. I think I got the UL ones. But yeah, so I have the mower being charged at this shop, and it goes through a Shelly 1 p.m. And so for that, because it's off site, I'm just using the Shelly app through the Shelly cloud. But again, that basically just tells me, so when I plug it in, when I get done at the end of the day, I can just check the Shelly app really quick, make sure it's charging, showing that, current is going through. And then, so then I also use that, like the monthly usage to pay the owner, how much electricity I've used.
Yeah, right.
Which is very little. It's actually, pretty amazing to mow on such little amount of money.
Wow.
Like it's saved me like $300 to $400 a month just buying this mower.
Wow.
It's incredible. Just on fuel. So
yeah, must be nice to have cheap electricity.
It is very cheap electricity. Yeah. So that's again, it's Montana. There's very few people here. So,
I wish I could say the same.
And we're really close to the coal mines.
Yeah.
Have you thought about like graphing this out in like a Grafana or something like that, sort of get some long-term trends and statistics on how you're charging batteries and how you're using the electricity on those mowers?
I've thought about it, and this is all still very, very new. As far, last year I was charging the thing at my house, and so I was basically just trying to get it to work. And again, summertime's really busy for me, so I haven't had. I'd like to do that right now. I'm using just the Shelly app, and it does have sort of a long term. It does show me the usage and stuff like that, but it's pretty basic. Just says on this date you use this much, and I haven't gotten into. I haven't like set up Grafana or any of those, like any of that stuff, just because it's. Again, because I haven't done any, I've never really worked with Linux or, set up a database or any of that stuff. So it's all been, still a big learning process for me. And so I think I would like to, and it makes sense, especially for for work, just because then I can see, you can start seeing how, if the batteries are starting to degrade or, just kind of,
exactly.
Just sort of a long-term data, but I just haven't had the time to dive into it just yet.
Yeah, you know what? There's a ton of cool tutorials and stuff out there, and I know Frank's actually made. I think it was Frank's that's made a InfluxDB and Grafana plugin for Has.io. In there. And I apologize if I'm giving the wrong person credit, but I'm pretty sure
I think it was. Because I set it up at the very beginning of my Home Assistant journey. I kind of set all that stuff up, and then I was like, this is too much
complex.
It's more complex than I'm ready for. So
yeah. I mean, give it a shot. Right? The problem is you need time for that kind of stuff, right? And I'm in that same boat, and I do understand some of these things, but it's at the same time I'm just like, I'm not going to sit and deal with this right now.
Yeah, and the thing for me too is that things. I would definitely like to do that, but then I think, there's a lot of things that I've set up like that, or, just not necessarily in home automation, but just something where it's like, it's tracking this and that and this. And then I never use it. I never go back and look at it. So I'm just like, I don't know if I really need to, but it would be interesting now just because I am using these batteries, and it would be, like Phil said, just to sort of track the electricity usage and just kind of over time, just to have a record of it for my business, honestly.
Well, it'd be cool to know some of these like statistics as well, right? Because I mean, batteries, obviously there is some level of churn with the batteries, and especially in a commercial use case like yours where you use them every day.
Yeah.
Right. I'm sure you run through batteries a lot faster than I would on my drill that I use like once every 3 weeks, right?
Yeah.
So it'd be kind of cool to see what that's like too, right? And even for you, just to kind of chart it out to say, hey, look, not only is this, cheaper for me, or it's more expensive up front, but then, it cheaper for me in the sense of I get this much use out of the battery before I have to rebuy it, and then do that kind of a math too, right? From a business sense, that may be interesting for you too, just to plot out.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing the toughest part right now for me is that the Shelly Cloud, I don't think you can bring it in. I think there's a custom integration where you can bring in the Shelly switch, but it doesn't have, at least the last time I checked, it didn't bring in the power monitoring into Home Assistant. So I don't really need to turn it on or off necessarily. And so and I know there's like, I could do, cause I'm using the local MQTT for my batteries in my house, for the small tool batteries. So I could, the sensor data comes in via that. But so I know there's like cloud MQTT or, there's some way to do that where I could probably, get that in to Home Assistant. But again, it's right now, all I'm wanting to know is that it's actually charging so that when I get there the next day, it's fully charged. So it's a, for me, it's a long-term deal, and I'll start adding these things as I can. But wintertime is usually the time when I'm capable of, doing some more things like that, just because it slows down for me a bit.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Well, it's. I was just quickly Googling this as you were talking, and it looks like there is a Shelly integration, and not integrations per se, but it's like you can flip it to Tasmota, and do that kind of stuff too. So that's, which is interesting.
I haven't done, so I've just in the last maybe 2 months kind of gotten into the ESP, like flashing the Node MCUs and stuff, and so it's like all that's, it's all still pretty new, and so it's right now it's working, so I don't want to
don't if it ain't broke.
Don't fix it.
But I'll definitely start toying around with more of that kind of stuff, and but
it's cool. I'm actually pretty surprised when you're saying, because I mean I'm assuming your mowers that you have are going to consume a lot more power just for, charging and stuff, right? Like I'm probably not as much as a car, but still a decent amount. And I'm surprised that the Shelly can keep up for such a tiny device that, from a amperage perspective. Right?
And so that was actually why. So I did a lot of research because I wanted to be able to do this when I bought that mower, and the Shelly so it's only, I think it's only the Shelly 1PM that has enough, allowance for because the mower I think it's like 1875 watts when it's charging. And so it's within the tolerance of that thing. So I was pretty excited about it. But they also have like a clamp energy monitor where it's not actually running through the device. And so I've thought about trying that as well, just for safety purposes.
Yeah, that one makes sense. Yeah, just because I was looking at the 1PM and it looks like, okay, this is actually like you run the power through it, and which I'm sure gives you a little more accuracy as well. But
I've been doing that for probably, let's see, I think it was like for maybe 2 months last summer, and then it's been about 3 months this summer, running it every single night, and it's been really good. So, and no melting or anything. I've been checking on it.
That's handy.
So
nothing like waking up to that smell of burning plastic in the morning.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. Well, in my house too, when I use I'm charging like the small tool batteries, even when I'm charging 6 at a time, I think it's a pretty small draw on it. So it's even through like a regular smart plug, I think it's still less than, I think it goes to like maybe 800 watts that it's pulling through, while it's, when all 6 are charging right at the beginning. So it's still fairly, low as far as what most of the smart plugs can handle. So, but it was a 2-pack with those Shellys. So
great. One for home, one for your shop.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome.
My garage door, I use an Insteon IO sensor or IO switch, or it's a plug that has a sensor and a switch integrated. And so I have the MyQ thing kind of as a backup, and then for guests and stuff. But for for my usage, I just have an NFC tag in my truck and then one on the side of the garage, and I just scan that with my phone, and then it
opens up.
Yeah. So that's, and I like that too, because MyQ, the API, like I used to use the MyQ integration, and it felt like every 6 months it would, break because they changed the API or something like that. And
yeah, it's been a lot more than every 6 months in my
because
I use the exact same thing, and it is. Well, and it was interesting actually. Somebody on the forums mentioned that the MyQ is doing this on purpose because it's not an official API.
Right.
So they're trying to discourage people from like doing backwards stuff.
Yeah, which I'm like, I bought the opener. Mine's an older one, so I have the MyQ gateway for it.
Yeah, mine. I have the same thing. Yeah.
Like at this point, why do you care?
Yeah,
right? You've already gotten your money from me, so it's like,
and so for that,
you're just inconveniencing.
I just use the app for that, or if I'm allowing a guest or something like that. But so I don't even bring that into Home Assistant anymore, just because it's not worth the trouble.
Yeah, and again, it's not a Home Assistant thing,
right?
It's a MyQ thing,
right?
So what does the NFC tag do? So when you scan your NFC tag, does it hit like a URL to something? Does it go to Home Assistant to call the service, or what's it doing there?
So that I'm using Tasker for that. So the NFC tag is basically just a blank tag. It just has a little code. So if anybody else scanned it, it would just be like a 10-digit number that shows up. But with Tasker, I've basically, when that tag is scanned, then it'll run a task, which basically calls a Home Assistant service.
Right.
And I've got it set so basically I don't have any remote access to my Home Assistant, and so with the Tasker profiles or whatever, it can wait until I'm on my Wi-Fi, and so it'll basically wait until it connects, and then when it connects, it'll send the service call, and then it opens up. So so yeah, it's kind of nice because I park outside. And not that it's a unsafe neighborhood or anything, but if you just have a garage door opener just hanging out, it's pretty easy to break a window and then get in.
Yep.
So that's like, well, at least this way, there's, you could still break a window in the house, I guess, but this is just a way to kind of keep it a little more secure for those.
Make it as hard as possible.
Exactly. For the lazy criminal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I really like having that, just because I can scan it, when I'm half a mile away from my house, and it'll wait up to 10 minutes. And so as soon as I pull up, it just turns on, or just, just opens up.
Oh, that's cool.
So,
oh, cool. Yeah. So so basically you can even do it when you if you're close by getting groceries, and just tap it when you get in the car, and then.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So that's been, and the reason I said it that way is because I used to actually live in a condo neighborhood, and with my lawn care company, I was actually mowing that. And so if I had it set up automatically to open whenever I was within near my house, it would just be opening and closing all day long. So
yeah. Well, and the thing is too, depending on, again, if you're far enough away, your
right
Wi-Fi will flap, right? Going on, off, on, off.
So I was trying to make it so it was a more, foolproof way to.
Yeah.
So it does require a little bit on my end, but not much.
That's fine. That's not a huge deal. Yeah. That's cool.
And then for presents, so we actually so I was using the Google Maps integration, but when we moved, I hadn't had all that set up yet, and basically I just have I have a separate instance of Home Assistant running on a Pi that just runs the Bluetooth device tracker. So it's just BT device tracker, I think. And that actually works really well. I tried to set that up because I'm running my main instance on a Mac Mini. But for some reason, I couldn't get the Bluetooth to come in consistently, or just at all. I just couldn't get it to recognize the Bluetooth chip inside the machine. And so I just used that second instance to basically just run presence detection. So if my wife's phone or my phone, and then my mother-in-law's phone, and any of those other, any guests come over, I get a notification showing that there's a new Bluetooth device in the house. And I can switch over to guest mode. and then I use, I think it's just MQTT State Stream, I think is what I'm using to bring that in.
Yeah.
Talk to each other.
And that works really well. The iPhone tends to drop on and off a little bit, and so I've set some tolerances just because of like I think it's their deep sleep or whatever the
Yeah, they shut everything down if it's not being used.
Battery.
Yeah, there's a custom integration called iPhone Detect that kind of helps with some of that and keeps it from dropping on, coming in and out a bunch, and that has actually worked really well. So yeah, I just kind of just use that, and then I've got a Ubiquiti network, so that's kind of a backup, for if the device is on the network as well. But the Bluetooth I know there's been some people don't like it, but for me it's been very consistent and worked really well. So that's kind of just what we use.
I found it was like one of the most reliable ones when I was in an apartment.
Oh, okay.
Just because close quarters, as soon as you got in up onto the level of the apartment, you were within range of Bluetooth, and lights would turn on. But now that we're in like a unit, and the house is there's more of a floor plan, reaching from one side of the house to the other side of the house, it's where it can get a bit tricky.
Yeah, and so we just have we have a 2-story house, and that other Pi that's running basically for presence detection is just under the stairs, so it's kind of like right in the middle of the house. So it actually still
right
works,
in the middle. Yeah, that's cool.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
That's wicked.
Yeah, so I thought it was interesting being a non-programmer. I feel like I've come a long way, and like I said, it's been about 2 to 3 years of this, and
definitely.
it's all just the forums have been very helpful, and so I love the system, and still a lot to learn. But
well, there's always a lot to learn, man.
But I've been pretty happy with it. It's been pretty solid. I haven't upgraded. I think I'm still on like 1.11. So it's been a little, or 1.10. So I'm still a little behind, but there's been some breaking changes in the last few releases that I know it's gonna take some time to to bring it back up to snuff. So I'm waiting for.
Sure.
I've got a couple hours.
Just rip the Band-Aid, just do it.
I know.
Well, Billy, thank you so much for taking the time to come on and share your awesome setup with us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Cheers. If you want to share your Home Assistant journey or come on as a guest, reach out to us at feedback@haspodcast.io. That's HASS podcast.io.
The Home Assistant podcast is hosted by Phil Hawthorne and myself, Rohan Karamandi. For links to topics that we discussed today, check out our show notes on haspodcast.io.